want to talk to you a little bit about the need, what I feel is the need for the Convention of States. Yesterday, I recorded this information at 4:50 p.m. The national debt was 34,816,578 billion. The debt per taxpayer was $266,952. Last year on June 6th, the national debt was 31 trillion, etc. The debt per taxpayer is $248,041. This represents an increase in the national debt of 2.985 trillion in just over 1 year, and an increase to the cost per taxpayer of $18,911. Does anyone think this rate of increase is not a problem? Ask members of Congress this question. A few years ago, U.S. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware introduced legislation to repeal the national debt ceiling. A press release he issued at the time said in part, "The time has come for Congress to eliminate the debt ceiling. Debt limit showdowns have become far too routine, and now it's considered almost normal to threaten default. This must change." If this is the logic being allowed to advance, what hope is there for your future? The federal debt has increased under both Democrat and Republican presidents. Here are my reasons to support Convention of States. I believe the writers of our Constitution saw the time when the federal government would usurp the power of the states and the people. The national debt is not seen by Congress or the administration as being a threat to our way of life. It is. We have runaway spending and a lack of will on the behalf of leaders at the federal level to do anything meaningful about it. Want proof? Consider the fact that the debt ceiling has been raised 90 times in the past few decades. The feds are using the tax dollars we send to DC to control activities in the state through mandates, some funded, some not. Obey the mandate or lose funding. This is in violation of our 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment states the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. At the Convention of States, I attended Convention of States, as Senator Lawson, I think, attended a couple years ago at a simulation. I'm not thinking that if we pass this, that I would be invited to go to a regular Convention of States because we're in the minority party. But I think the dialogue between the red states and the blue states is something that's needed. Here's one of the amendment I proposed that never got heard because of just the time factor. The federal government cannot withhold funding from the states to force them into compliance with mandates that usurp the authority of the states under the 10th Amendment. The purpose of this amendment would be to remove the incentive of the federal government to use tax dollars to control the actions of the state. I see this as appropriate to the balanced budget amendment because it removes the incentive of the federal government to spend money as a control factor. Do we take a risk with Convention of States? Perhaps, but how much more unbearable and overpowering does our federal government become before we take action? Question: when did states start on a course that would allow the growth of the federal government and the diminishing of state rights? Answer is February 3rd, 1913, when Delaware became the 36th state, because there was only 48 states at the time, to ratify the 16th Amendment that gave Congress the power to collect taxes on incomes. At that time, the nominal proposed tax rate was around 1%. That rate has increased to more than 30% on average. As a result, the federal government has grown beyond what authority was granted in the U.S. Constitution and uses its resources to dictate policies to the states by rewarding states that comply with its demands and punishing states that do not comply by withholding funding. Increasing the national debt is not the solution. It's an admission by members of Congress that they are incapable of managing the federal government in a responsible manner. Congress members have shown us repeatedly that they do not have the will to correct the problem of spending more money than is supported by revenues. Let this sink in. Congress last year increased the debt ceiling by $4 trillion under the misnomer, the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Who do they think they're fooling with that title? Will they be bragging about this responsible action during their next reelection campaign? More than likely, they will be trumpeting the federal dollars they sent into their districts, dollars made available by increasing the debt ceiling. They will neglect to say that each taxpayer's share of the national debt is more than $250,000. I agree wholeheartedly with the Convention of States opponents that we already have an excellent Constitution. Sadly, we do not have enough members of Congress willing to put the interest of protecting and preserving our republic above their own self-interest. The founders knew this and included the Article 5 Convention of States provision in the Constitution. Here are some things to think about. What happens to middle-class America when a crisis is declared, such as a debt crisis? What freedoms will we be asked to sacrifice to ensure our security? Washington will not fix itself. Hundreds of proposed amendments to the U.S. Constitution are introduced each session of the United States Congress. Since 1789, approximately 12,000 measures have been proposed to amend the Constitution, an average of more than 100 for each two-year term of Congress. Since 1789, Congress has sent just 33 amendments to the states for ratification. Of these, 27 have been ratified. Our debt problem is being ignored, or worse. Is this a deliberate attempt to change the way that we do business in America and to take away rights that were guaranteed by most of these amendments to the Constitution? Thank you.
Senator Buxton.